Welcome back. We're now on page 7, and this is asking us about some vocabulary. So you're going to notice that we're going to have quite a few details here as we start getting into some of the nuts and bolts of what we think of when we think of the word geometry, or the subject geometry. So the first item we have here says that we're supposed to pick a vocabulary term on the right that goes with what they show. So hopefully you recognize the very first item as a point. So I'm going to put the word point over here. And you'll see that a point can be labeled with a dot. It's represented by a dot. A point is not something that we can hold, but we can represent it. So if we can't hold something, it's called intangible, but we can represent it. You'll notice that it'll be named with a capital letter. That's pretty typical. Usually you'll also notice that when they start naming points, they'll typically go alphabetically. So see if you notice that as we go along here. Okay, the next item we have, the next diagram, they show us, hopefully you recognize this as a line. You'll see a couple different ways of naming this line. The important parts to notice are that it does have arrows on both ends. It goes on forever in both directions, indefinitely. So we're going to label that as a line. You'll see that you have two capital letters. This line can be called line AB. You'll notice the little symbol above it. It can also be called line BA. So I'm going to add that here. And you'll see that it's got a cursive L. So sometimes you'll see them call this line L. You write the word line, and then you use the capital letter next to it. So any of those names would be perfectly fine. We have another representation similar to our point. A plane is not something that we can physically hold, but we can represent a plane. This also goes on forever in all directions. If you're on a tabletop right now, that's a representation of a plane. If you can imagine that extending forever in all directions, kind of stretches your mind a little there, so think about that. This is not an airplane, but a plane, a geometric plane. You'll notice that it also has capital letters and these dots. So those are points that are on the plane. This one up here does not have a point. So you'll notice over on the side they name this plane P, or you would see the word written out, plane P. Or you can use 3 points that are on that plane, that are contained on that plane. So plane A, B, C is also another good name for this plane. So a variety of names that you can call that. Okay, this one looks a little different than the line that we had. Hopefully you recognize this as a line segment. They call it just a segment. I'm going to call it a line segment. So a segment is a portion of a line. It has a clear start and a clear stop. You'll notice that the symbol above these capital letters AB, line segment AB is how we would read that, do not have the 2 arrows like we had up here. So again, I can call this line segment AB, but I can also start at point B and go over to point A. So I could also call this line segment BA. That would be perfectly fine. Okay, moving right along. We have now kind of a portion, another portion of the line that we had up here. You'll notice this has a clear start and it goes through another point. So this is called a ray. It extends indefinitely in one direction. So this can be a little confusing because when you write ray AB, you'd notice that it has its own symbol, and the way that is pointing always points to the right, no matter what our picture looks like. So if I drew my ray AB like this, I would still call it ray AB with my symbol pointing to the right. So that can be a little bit confusing. It is very important that this point A is listed first, because that's where our ray starts. It does not start at point B and go through A. That would be different. If it started at point B and it went this way through A, that would be called ray BA. And again, you still have your symbol pointing to the right. So be really cautious that the first letter that you're using is where your ray is starting. That's called your initial point. Initial means starting, right? Lots of vocab here. Okay, so again, process of elimination says that here we have two rays stuck together, kind of looks like a line, and these are called opposite rays. So there are two rays put together going in opposite directions. One of them is ray CA, so starting at C, and let the points move your eyes or move your pencil through the other point. So starting at C and passing through A, there's one ray. And again, starting at point C and moving out through B is our second ray. When they're put together and they share that common starting point, that makes them opposite rays. Okay, notice again, the symbols both point to the right, even though if we were to draw this, C going out through A goes off to the left. C going out through A goes off to the left, and C going out through B goes off to the right. But when we write them, ray CA and ray CB, their symbol above the writing, the letters, points off to the right. Okay, I'm going to stop.